Mėly bičiuliai, pradedame mūsų šios dienos.
Dear participants, let's start the second part of the conference. Yesterday we had a impressive day. We had very important presentations, and if you didn't have an opportunity to hear them, so my recommendation is to somehow get access to the material, to the information, to presentations. All the material will be accessible for you. So now, before starting, full silence. Silence has a short address to all of us.
I just wanted to bring you some short greetings from Dr. Mike Davidson, who initially was going to be here. His wife has been discovered to have a serious medical condition, and they had to attend to that. And so he asked me to express his regrets, to thank you for your flexibility, and also to invite you to come to a conference that he's going to be hosting, or his organization is going to be hosting in late October near Warsaw, Poland. The conference is titled Turning the Tide, Cross-Disciplinary Approaches to Issues of Sexuality and Gender. And it sounds like something, having met many of you, that you might be interested in. Both Diane, who spoke yesterday, or who will be speaking later today, and myself will be participants in that conference. It will be a collection of clinicians, persons who deal with persons in therapy for same-sex attraction, and politicians, I would say, and international attorneys. There'll be attorneys and attorney groups there from England and Australia and from the Scandinavian countries, many parts of the world. It is an invitation-only conference. And so I'm going to give you an email address in a minute. If you're interested in going, or would just like more information, you can just write to the person at this email address, and they'll pass it on, and you can get more information. Here is the email address. It's my email address. So it'd be Sullins, SULLINS, @cua.edu. Now, you can also, with this email address, send me an email and say, Dr. Sullins, I would like a copy of your presentation. And I will send you back a copy of the slides that I shared yesterday, as well as all of the cited studies. Any study that I made reference to, I'll send you a full text copy of that study so that you can see for yourself what the evidence is. Thank you very much.
So now let's continue our conference. Now we have a request to the speakers. Could you speak, not so fast, because for the translators it is very difficult to follow your thoughts, and it is important to convey everything because the conference is really very important. Now the floor is given to Mrs. Diane. She will speak about the rights of parents in a changing culture. So Diane, please, the floor is yours.
Malonu Society. Astam.
Good morning. I'm very pleased to see you. My name is Diana. Esu iš Škotijos.
Part of this conference, and do thank you for your invitation to come and participate. I have had a long-standing love of the Baltic states. Over 20 years ago, I was working in Latvia and was very curious about Lithuania in those days. So here I am with the honor and privilege of being in Lithuania and being a contributor to the Lithuanian Family Movements Conference. So I do thank you for your invitation. Standing for natural rights, let's save Europe together. The title of my presentation is The Rights of Parents in a Changing Culture. Over the last 24 hours, we've heard a lot about the changes in our culture. So as I continue, the rights of parents in a changing culture. So the aim of my session is to enlighten, to give some insight, to give some understanding of what's happening in our culture, particularly in the West, but perhaps how it's going to affect nations further east. To engage with you, to allow us to engage together. I've had the privilege of chatting with colleagues from Czech Republic, from Slovakia, from Poland, from America, and here we are engaging with one another, because as we work together, we're a greater force for good. To equip. So I'm going to give some background information that will equip you with truth, so that you can stand up courageously and wisely and engage in some difficult conversations. And to encourage you. What I've heard over the last 24 hours is the discouragement that Lithuanian people are feeling. They're feeling marginalised. They're feeling very humble. They're feeling overwhelmed by what's happening. And I hope that this conference, not just my contribution, but the contribution of colleagues, has been encouraging you that there is hope. We can make a difference. We can protect our children and our young people. We can protect the family. We can protect marriage. Parents, carers, grandparents, aunts and uncles, we have a God-given and rightful role in the nurture, in the health and well-being of our children and our young people. It's a God-given right and a God-given role. Yesterday we heard much about families. Paul presented much to us about families. As I was preparing this, I had a very broad title, and I had to think, how do I approach addressing such a crowd of families, of professionals of press, people who are concerned about the way things are going? And I realised what we need to think about is what is truth and what is lie, what is deception. There's very much discussion at the moment about what is it to be human. In the UK, there are moves to introduce robots into the care of older people. Robots? Older people need a human touch. They don't need a cold metal robot attending to their needs. What is it to be human? What is it to be a man and what is it to be a woman? As was mentioned earlier, I'm a member of the Scottish Family Party. And last year, we went on a street campaign, and we were asking, can a man become a woman? Equally, can a woman become a man? And as I went out to engage people in conversation, they were very dismissive. They just didn't want to talk about it. So what do you think? Can a man really become a woman? He can put a wig on and a dress on, but he really can't become a woman, can he? Or can he? So, truth versus deception. Issues around identity. Who am I? Where do I come from? What is my purpose in being on the earth? And as we'll hear, children and young people grapple with, who am I? What am I supposed to be? Mummy and Daddy expect me to be like this, but I want to be like that. Parents of adolescents, young people who are going through puberty, have a lot of difficulties coming to terms with who they are. And as we'll hear later, there are many social pressures saying a little boy who likes to play with a doll's pram, maybe he's leaning towards becoming a trans female. So the whole issue of identity. And terms like gender fluidity, gender dysphoria, sexualization, many of these things are impacting the health and well-being of our children and young people. Now, another truth. What is a family? Yesterday we had a very, very detailed presentation from Paul as he was looking at same-sex marriage and the impact on children. And the outcome, the conclusion was that the best place where children can be nurtured is within a family where they're with their biological parents. So surely for Lithuanian families, that's a real encouragement to you when you are working so hard to promote happy, healthy families. The message is that all children do better within families where they have their mummy and their daddy. They have their biological parents. What is a family? Another discussion, and we've had part of this discussion in the taxi on the way here, the role of the state, the roles of parents versus the state. Certainly in England and in Scotland too, we're seeing state control impinging on the role of parents. I'll speak a little about that in a moment. We heard from Hungary yesterday where the politicians, the government have got policies, have guidelines, have a whole community and structure set up to support the family. So in many ways, that's very good. The state is working together to promote healthy, wholesome families. The other side would be that a state is involved in dismissing truth, taking responsibility away from parents, the state taking over in education. In Scotland, we're very concerned about what children are being taught in schools. And the leader of our party, Mr. Richard Lucas, has produced this, Corrupting Young Minds. This is a very detailed document outlining what is happening in Scottish schools. 3-year-olds are being taught about masturbation. Pornography is being encouraged. Children are being encouraged to explore their bodies and develop some sexual sensations. It's being suggested that families can be 2 mummies and 2 daddies. May I just give you an example? I was walking down the street and I saw 2 ladies, one pushing a pram, one had her hand holding the hand of a 3-year-old, or watching a little 3-year-old. He had his hands in his pockets. And I said, oh, he must have been copying his daddy. And the lady said, no, this little boy has 2 mummies. I was quite shocked. It was my first encounter with same-sex family. So I said, oh, well, maybe he's been copying Grandad then, knowing that little children copy behaviour. If you have little ones yourself, you realise that they copy your behaviour. And the mother's response was, oh no, he's a little boy in his own right. My question was, a boy with 2 mummies, how does he learn what it is to be a boy child, a boy adolescent, a boy adult when he has 2 mummies? So I think, as Paul said yesterday, children need to have parents they need to have a mummy and a daddy. With their mummy, they're learning many things. Little girls are learning many things from their mummies. Little boys are learning many things from their daddies. But also these children are learning how mummies and daddies relate together, how they communicate, how they deal with difficulties. So children need to have their biological parents. Where do we find truth? Who and what do we believe? So I feel that in these days, in Lithuania, in Scotland where I'm working, in the United Kingdom, in America. We all need to understand what it is we personally believe. So what is truth and where do we find it? I make no apology. I'm a committed Christian, and for me, the Bible is the truth which God lays out in the Bible. Some people disagree, but forgive me, I make no apology. I'm speaking from a Christian point of view. So, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. That is creation. God created male and female. And that was, I think that was something Father Grigors did say yesterday, didn't he? That, men and women are created by God. Two sexes, male and female. For this reason, this is referring to marriage now. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united with his wife, and they will become one flesh. That is our mandate for heterosexual marriage, isn't it? And as Paul said yesterday, marriage means that both partners are, both man and wife, husband and wife, are sexually exclusive. They have a lifelong, permanent relationship. And they also have public status. And what better environment to rear children? The second one, God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth." That's procreation. Veronica from Poland stressed the importance of protecting families. So here we have the truth that I believe is in the Bible. We have creation, male and female, he created them. We have marriage. A man leaves his mother and father and goes and joins with his wife. And the third is procreation. Man and women, man and wife, husband and wife united together. That is the ideal environment for procreation, for the rearing of children. Very controversial these days, but I believe that's the truth. The next slide is a contact I would really recommend that you explore, investigate, and look at. The Family Watch International is an international organisation. As it says, it's watching families. The lady Sharon Slater, who set it up, is a Christian lady, and she's passionate about wholesome, healthy, heterosexual marriage and healthy families, standing for the family worldwide. And as Lithuanian colleagues, friends, families, parents, children, young people, I really would encourage you to look at their website. I'm not sure if they've got Lithuanian translation. I can ask about it. I did contact them, and I'll give some information at the end of my presentation about their findings and what they're saying about Lithuania. Next one, please. So this is a message that is loud and clear. Families around the world are rising up. Loud, meaningful, and courageous voices. That's my mantra to you today. Families around the world are rising up. Even we want to encourage families in Lithuania to rise up with loud, meaningful, courageous voices. Now, this is a video slip I'd like you to look at. CSE, Comprehensive Sexual Education. This is what is taking the world by storm. We have it in Scotland, we have it in England, we have it all over the world. There are some countries that haven't got it yet. I think Italy, Spain, I'm not sure if Poland has it, Lithuania not yet, but there's a real push to get this CSE into all countries, into all schools. It is a war on children. As you look at this, it may be difficult to understand it, but the graphics are very disturbing. So just settle back and just Engage with this for 10 minutes.
This is definitely an attack. It will affect your child rearing. It will affect your education system.
This is instructions for the teacher in the classroom to ask her or his students, how do people express their sexual feelings? What is abstinence? And here are some answers. Oral sex, masturbation, anal sex, massage, holding hands, touching each other's genitals, saying, I like you. And what they're doing is equating all these things. Saying, I like you is equal to anal sex.
It is pornography. Men, especially on the House floor, did not want to look at. We couldn't show this on the television news, but yet we want our 4th grade children to be looking at this book.
In the name of sexuality education, children are seeing obscene materials that have been ruled by Congress and by the Supreme Court impossible to show to children.
An online CSE program for African youth called The World Starts With Me tells children that sexuality includes oral sex and masturbation. It then tells them it's their own choice if they want to lose their virginity. It shows children pictures of naked girls and boys in various stages of development, and then asks them to point out differences in their private parts. Parents likely will never know, as it is all done online away from home.
They have elementary students as young as 9 years old. Then they teach them how to wear a condom. And they have this plastic genitalia, and they even have young girls. They're teaching them how to put a condom on a male genitalia and boys how to put a condom on a women's genitalia without the knowledge and consent of the parents.
They're giving them handouts, negotiating sexual encounters with other students. For example, there are statements like this: can I take your shirt off? It makes me hot when you touch me here. Is it okay if I take my pants off?
Where we in Latin America, we still have a lot of poverty. We have communities that don't have fresh water, that don't have electricity. Focus is completely shifted from basic needs. They get comprehensive sexual education without the consent of parents, taking and deconstructing the family.
My brother Luigi and I had an opportunity to go to the United Nations and give a speech on the UN floor. I told them how Planned Parenthood was passing out a booklet for HIV positive youth at the United Nations called Healthy, Happy, and Hot. This is for the kids who have AIDS. It teaches about sexual pleasure through masturbation, with same-sex partners, and even if you are drunk.
This pamphlet called Healthy, Happy, and Hot tells young people that you have the right not to disclose your HIV status to a sexual partner if you're not comfortable. It also tells young people that are HIV positive that if they decide with their partner not to wear a condom, that's their decision.
The World Health Organization standards for sexuality education in Europe actually suggest that children ages 0 to 4 should be given information about masturbation and given the right to explore their gender identity. For ages 4 to 6, children should be taught about same-sex relationships and respect for different norms regarding sexuality.
The interests of organizations like UNFPA and IPPF is to get parents out of the picture and to radicalize and sexualize children.
UNFPA has tried to convince my country to change our positions on issues such as reproductive rights and comprehensive sexuality education. Madam Chair, does the UNFPA think it can do this because Nauru is the smallest member state of the United Nations?
The Nigerian government was actually told by the Western countries that if they do not give in, that they will be denied foreign aid.
On page 89 of a UNICEF-published Sexual and Reproductive Health Manual, UNICEF listed situations in which one can obtain sexual pleasure that included sexual responses directed towards inanimate objects, animals, minors, and non-consenting persons.
In the context of the Sustainable Development Goals, that determines the agenda for the next 15 years. The voice is very, very biased. It's just International Planned Parenthood Federation and their affiliates have a direct influence on the outcome documents, on what is established, what is negotiated at the UN.
Some of the objectives of the UNESCO Sexuality Education Guidelines include teaching children at age 9 about sexual stimulation and the definition and function of orgasm, and at age 15, that both men and women can receive sexual pleasure with a partner of the same or opposite sex. The It's All One curriculum, also promoted by International Planned Parenthood, reveals the multiple manipulative tactics used to indoctrinate and sexualize children through CSE. Like other CSE programs, It's All One claims, among other things, to be evidence-based, comprehensive, human rights, gender-sensitive, and culturally appropriate education that will increase young people's responsible decision-making, to reduce adolescent rates of pregnancy and sexually transmitted infections, including HIV. It's All One, however, like most CSE programs, is really just cleverly disguised abortion rights, sexual pleasure education masquerading as human rights, gender, and sexual and reproductive health education. It aggressively promotes abortion. With over 112 references to abortion, It's All One has an obsessive focus on sexual pleasure, mentioning sexual pleasure 62 times. It promotes multiple sex acts and instructs children on how to stimulate themselves or their partner to orgasm. To explore their readiness, children fill out a worksheet that infers children are ready to have sex when you are feeling sexually attracted to the other person and when you're feeling comfortable about telling the other person what feels good sexually. It teaches that human rights encompass sexual rights, including alleged rights to all persons to sexual expression and the right to seek sexual pleasure. Hooking children on sex is a multi-billion-dollar business for Planned Parenthood and other similar organizations. This is because children, or prospects, once sexualized, become Planned Parenthood customers dependent upon their services. Comprehensive sexuality education programs are disguised under many names. They may be called comprehensive sex or sexual education, education on human sexuality, reproductive health education, information on sexual and reproductive health, family life education, teen pregnancy prevention, rape prevention, anti-bullying programs, HIV/AIDS prevention, and sometimes even abstinence or abstinence plus education. CSE programs usually falsely claim to be age-appropriate, evidence-based, healthy sexuality education that will prevent teen pregnancy, sexual abuse, STDs, and HIV.
One of the handouts that concerns me the most is called the Genderbread Person. They teach that gender is a spectrum, that you can choose to be whatever you want. You could be all female one day and the next day feel like you're neither female or male.
Frankly, it's confusing. It's a mental molestation. We're confusing these kids as to what they are.
From a medical perspective, when sexual freedom is the priority, then sexual health is going to suffer.
There are laws in Oregon where children as young as 15 can get taxpayer-funded sex changes without parental consent. You can't have an aspirin at school without parental consent. However, a student could make these life-altering, permanent decisions without their parental knowledge or consent.
Sexual rights, sexual education movements began with Dr. Alfred C. Kinsey. Kinsey actually had pedophiles measure with a stopwatch how many children could achieve what he called orgasms within a 24-hour period. Today, comprehensive sexuality education is based on this philosophy that children are sexual from birth, created by Kinsey.
Say no to CSE! Say no to CSE!
We've got to stop it. We've got to use everything at our disposal. We have to stand together to stop this attack against our children.
And they have all this funding and this organization, but we know that if we stand together, we can do something for the family, for the children.
We stopped the Kinsey sexuality education program in Croatia.
It is time for parents to say, no, my family is mine. My wife is mine. I am hers. Our children are ours.
Band together and find ways to stop it from entering your country.
Men have to rise up, defend their family. On matters sexual, the fathers have got to stand up. Say, you have no place talking sexuality to my children. We resist it, even with our lives, because that's what life is all about.
It's happening on our watch. If we don't do something about it, it is all of us that carry that guilt.
To learn more and to sign the petition to stop comprehensive sexuality education, go to stopcse.org. Together, we can and will protect the world's children.
All very shocking, I'm sure you would agree. So children and young people are being exposed to content and images to question the value and morals of parents. Part of the video was suggesting that children are being taught behind closed school doors. Much of this education is going on without parents' knowledge. And a big aim is to promote sexual rights of children. Surely parents have rights and responsibilities. Do children really have sexual rights? Should children have sexual rights? Sexual rights relate to a person's sexuality, their sexual health, sexual orientation and sexual identity. But we've said that a little boy is born a boy, a little girl is born a girl, or a female and a male. God created them male and female. Their sexual identity is clear at birth. They have a biology that is either male or female. They have a biology that is a boy or a girl. An adolescent boy, an adolescent girl. The whole agenda, this word ideology. Now, what is this ideology? It's about a study of ideas. But what have we said earlier? Truth versus lies. Much of what is promoted in this Stop CSE, in the comprehensive sex education, is lie. It's not founded on truth, science, or biology. So, the truth is, my family is mine. Our children are ours. Family is at the heart of God's best for the nurturing and rearing of children. Strong families make a strong nation, and the aim of all this ideology is to destroy family life, thereby destroying the power of nations. One way to destroy a nation is to destroy its families. So I would urge you as Lithuanians to stand up to fight for and protect your families. Truth. So what is the truth that you hold so dear? The three things that Father Grigor said yesterday were the family, culture, and faith in God. They are the three things that are going to really enable you to move forward with courage. Male and female. Male and female have two very distinct and complementary roles. Is anybody familiar with this book? Men are from Mars and women are from Venus. It's a very good read. What it says that men and women have different communication styles. So if you're married and you have a problem, if you're a man, it's likely you'll go and hide in the garden shed. If you're a wife and you have a problem, you want to talk about it. So how is it that a transgender man trying to be a woman, when he communicates as a supposed woman, does he talk or does he go into the garden shed? So there are distinct differences. Male and female are very different. They were designed differently, but have complementary roles. They have very different emotional needs. They have very different ways of behaving. Consider the behaviour of little children, boys and girls. Very often the little girl is happy to play with a pram and dollies in the corner. Little boy wanting to play more actively, climb trees. But sometimes little boys prefer to play with dollies' prams and spend his time with little girls. That is not an alarm that this little boy has got some gender confusion. This is just a sign this little boy is learning about friendships. He's learning about different types of toys. He's not showing the exhibits of early homosexual behaviour or gender dysphoria. But sadly, in the UK, little children in primary school, which is before the age of 10, if they are observed to be playing with girls' toys, the teachers are thinking, aha, he's got some gender confusion. And if that little boy then says he wants to wear girls' clothes and wants to be called Mary, the teacher will encourage that. And that is a secret between the child and the teacher. The little boy is being coerced almost into getting some gender confusion. A more satisfactory management of that situation would be just to ignore it. If a little boy wants to wear dead girls' clothes, that's fine, but you do not make a big issue of it. You affirm that little boy, that he's a little boy, he's very handsome, he's very active, rather than encouraging him to adopt the opposite sex. So certainly we need to be alert to what's happening in our schools. A very worrying statement on the 6th of May, issued by the WHO and the United Nations. Little children are sexual beings and must have sexual partners and begin to be sexually active as soon as possible. Kindergartens and nurseries and schools must teach children to develop lust and sexual desire, learn masturbation, and learn about same-sex relationships. Well, what nonsense. The idea that children have rights, they have a gender identity, but that doesn't match up with their biological sex. So as I said, this is all about ideas. Very disturbing news from the United Nations and WHO. Andreas referred to them yesterday when he was speaking of globalization, didn't he? So where did all this come from? On the video we heard about Alfred Kinsey, didn't we? And his declaration in the 1950s was that all sex is good sex and there's no harm in children engaging in sexual activity. And he declared that children are sexual beings from birth. What nonsense. Another name that features in the history of sexuality is John Money. He was a psychologist from New Zealand. And the story goes there were a pair of boy twins who needed to have circumcisions. They needed to have a loosening of the foreskin on the tip of their penis. One little boy, one baby, had a very successful operation. The second little boy, it was disastrous. He ended up with a penis that was gangrenous. Gangrene means dead. So the parents were despairing. What do they do with this little boy who's got a penis that's just not healthy? It's damaged. At 8 months, they took the twins to see John Money. And he had a very simple answer. Well, we just castrate, we take off the penis and all his private parts, and you bring him up as a little girl. Sent the family away. They thought this was the answer. They were happy. They had a boy and a girl. They had David and they had Brenda. However, the story broke in the 1990s. So this happened in the 1950s. So 40 years on, 1997, John Money's research was published. And Brenda came out. Brenda came out with his story. He'd found life very, very difficult as a child in school. He couldn't adopt this female role, this little girl. He was wanting to play games with boys. He was wanting to climb trees. There was something inside of him, his male hormones, that were not allowing him to perform as a little girl. Even though his parents were saying, oh, you're a little girl, you're wearing dresses. This little boy's life was dreadful. I have notes about it and I've lost them, but it was a disaster. So later on, his twin brother committed suicide and Brenda / David committed suicide too. The message is that you cannot socialise a little boy into being a girl. Money's theory was that if you socialise a child before the age of 2.5, you can change their life. They can live in the opposite sex. Absolute nonsense. The third reference there is After the Ball. And this was a book that was written by two men, a PR expert and a psychiatrist. They devised a strategy to try and change attitudes to homosexuals. It was around the time of the HIV/AIDS epidemic. So their idea was to change public views on homosexuals from promiscuous sexual minorities seeking greater opportunities to influence to equal citizens demanding equal rights. Next one, please. So where did all this come from, this idea? It's come from WHO. All this has come from these organisations that are trying to push it all globally. Next one. The purpose is to indoctrinate children, to sexualise children. And if you remember, there was a reference to these become consumers. If these people become confused by their identity, they'll be wanting cross-sex hormones, they'll be wanting surgery. They're going to be consumers of these reproductive health services. Next one. And again. Another one. So the whole meaning and purpose, I would say, is to destroy the family, but also it wants to change social norms. They're trying to change our culture and to enforce children's rights. Moving on. Another one. Right. So the positive thing is that 30 years ago, there was a study started looking at this comprehensive education, a very detailed assessment. And the outcome of this detailed assessment was that it's not effective and it's harmful. So CSE, comprehensive sex education, is not effective and it's harmful. There's little evidence of it being effective. It's harmful, and the whole message of abstinence is the best message. Again. Next one. That's right. So here, the whole message is that these programs are doing harm. So, what is the best approach to protecting and preparing our children and young people for the future? So, do you have any ideas yourself? I think I've encouraged the whole idea of family, a secure, stable, loving family with open communication, encouraging your daughters, they're beautiful, they're feminine, and their boys are handsome and they're active. So encouraging the gender, encouraging the sex that your children and grandchildren have. Listen to them, watch them, and be very alert and very vigilant to what messages they're coming home with. A story of a little 5-year-old who came home and said, why haven't I got 2 mummies? A little boy comes home into a heterosexual family asking his mummy, why haven't I got 2 mummies? So parents need to be equipped with the courage to say, our family is like this. These are our values, these are our morals. They are different, but we are living to the truthful model. A big important area here is protecting your young people from social media. That is a huge intrusion into their lives. And social media has lots and lots and lots of unhelpful, damaging material. So regulating what your children, grandchildren are watching and have access to on social media. Children and young people deserve to be protected from harmful ideologies. Next one. This is just a word and some guidance about school. Are your children safe at school? Are your grandchildren safe at school? Should I be involved in their education of our relationship sex education? Yes, 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 you should be. And if you need to see policies, you need to also be just asking, who is teaching my child? In Scotland and in the UK, schools are inviting third-party agencies to come into schools. And they're often not health-based, they're not biological-based, they're using the ideology. So they're the ones that are promoting this bad news. So I have got information about safe school and how to help parents. Right, next one. It's perfectly normal. If you have teenagers, it's perfectly normal to feel confused about who you are. There's a surge of hormones. There can be difficult and challenging behaviour from teenagers. They might retreat to their rooms and be uncommunicative. Peers, school, social media may encourage them to develop a confusion about who they are, thinking, I might be gay, I might be a lesbian. Roles of parents and grandparents is to affirm the child or young person's biological sex. So what is needed? Lots of patience, space and time to listen, lots of outdoor activities, time to let off steam, allow them to talk. Another message, families around the world are rising up, and we want Lithuanian families also to rise up, don't we? A loud, meaningful and courageous voice. Just an ongoing challenge in the UK, in Wales. In Wales, comprehensive sex education has been introduced now, and parents have no right to withdraw. Children from the age of 3 to 16 must receive compulsory sex education. Little children of 4 are encouraged to masturbate. There's exposure to pornography. There's much that is unhealthy for young people, children and young people. A group of 3 mums started a campaign against this. In December 2022, 500 parents took the Welsh Government to court for a judicial review. The judge said it was okay. They're putting up a very strong appeal. Last week, those 3 mums went to the Houses of Parliament and spoke to MPs. There is growing momentum against compulsory sex education in Wales. So, people working together can make a difference. Some resources for parents. I have brought quite a few things from the Scottish Family Party and also something called the Schoolgate campaign. There are many resources online, and I'm certainly very willing to be a contact person to support families. Again, next one. Say no to comprehensive sex education. My mantra is that families, individuals, you speak out with a loud, meaningful and courageous voice. Next one. So, together we can protect the safety and innocence of children and young people. The big thing is, within the family, keep open communication, really investigate what child's been taught in school. So the effectiveness of a group is greater than the sum of the parents, of some of the parts. So it's saying that we're much more effective as a group rather than individuals. I think I'm about finished, if that's... I've gone on rather a long time, haven't I? Is it helpful to just talk a little bit about what's happening in Lithuania? Shall I do that? So as I said, back to slide 6, the Family Watch International. They have done an investigation into what's happening in Lithuania, and I have information which, back again, further back, keep going back. Keep going. Keep going. And a bit further. That's it. So this organisation, I contacted them personally and asked about what was happening in Lithuania. And there are moves to introduce to encourage early sexual behaviours and encourage sex change. So that's when children are confused about their identity, and they're trying to encourage them to think about, well, you might be a boy, you might be a girl, or create more confusion. Parents are saying they want to be taught about what it is to be a family. So the push is to get sexuality and gender confusion there, but Lithuanian parents are saying, no, we want to be hearing about a family and involve and have conversations around what is a healthy, wholesome family. There are some concerns about the Istanbul Convention, so that's something that needs looking into. In October 2022, there were recommendations that Lithuanian schools introduce life skills. So parents need to be asking, what's included in this life skills? It sounds very untroubling in a way, but life skills, they could sneak in some sex education, some unhealthy information. Important point, they're going to introduce third-party organisations to train teachers. So we need to be very aware of who are these people. Are these lobbyists or are they trained health professionals? An important partner in all of this is the EU, and we heard about that yesterday. Sex education is mandatory in most of the EU states, except Lithuania, Spain, Italy, Croatia, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania and Bulgaria. So those are countries that it's worth you networking with and learning from and banding together. There's a very unhelpful video called From Brooklyn to Vilnius. It's an activist journey through Lithuania, and that's a very powerful video that is quite harmful, but that's circulating. So I think that concludes my presentation. Rather detailed, but I trust it's been helpful to you all. Thank you for your attention.
Labai atsiprašau.
I'm very sorry. I hope that now we will give a floor to Richard Lucas. He was supposed to be the first. Now he can address our conference from the Scottish Family Party. He's the chair of the party. Sveikinimai nuo Škotijos šeimų partijos, mes iš tikrųjų labai rūpinamės.
It's very exciting, and we offer you every encouragement with that, because this is a worldwide battle, isn't it? We're tackling the same issues in Scotland as you are in Lithuania. And we're finding more and more people are waking up and realizing that we need a change of direction. And I'm sure that will be the same in Lithuania as well. I'm really sorry I couldn't be with you in person. I would have loved to be there. In the future, I really hope to be able to come to one of your events. That would be a great privilege and honor, and I hope that will be possible in the future. Similarly, we'd be delighted to welcome some of your representatives to one of our events in the future as well. We'll certainly maintain contact and keep up the great work. This sits proudly in my study at home, so you're on my mind often, and we wish you best wishes for your endeavors into the future. Thanks very much.
Už tokį energingą ir smagų pasveikinimą.
Thank you for such an energetic, short speech. And now I would like to give the floor to Algimantas Rusteika, publicist, public figure and member of the Council, Communication Officer of the Families of Lithuania Movement, and he will present a review of the genderism agenda implementation in Lithuania and its perspectives. I hope that you can hear me. Reasons, causes, we keep asking where from and why did it come? After all, the natural family is a condition for the survival of society and the state, which ensures the continuity of the nation and humanity. How could such an ideology and practice that negates, denies it, arise and spread globally? Genderism is the Western state religion of the 21st century, based on faith, the rights of all kinds of queer gender identities, the daily liturgy of the media, the fierce demand for faith and fierce persecution of non-believers. State and international institutions take all efforts to legitimize and legally protect this evil religion. Yet the dictatorship against society opened for us the reality of society itself. We saw how obedient, naive, trusting those who blatantly lie to us we can be. And for some reason, we are not surprised to see how cowardly and conciliatory we are, indifferent to the misfortune, trouble or failure of others, and how we tend to blend in with the crowd and not challenge obvious justice. Due to the prevalence of LGBT and genderism ideologies, contrary to common sense and human nature, it is often said that this is a result of the Frankfurt School and the long-standing work of the neo-Marxism in the universities of the Western world. That these are simply the ideas of cultural Marxism developed by liberation philosophers and pseudo-revolutionary practitioners. Yet neither in nature nor in society coincidences never prevail. Even the greatest global insanities have reasons and express certain interests, and only when useful they receive support, are implemented and established in society. The ideology of LGBT and genderism emerged from the gay bars and became a political practice only because it served the interests of transnational corporations, global financial and political groups. Each century has a central event, the consequences of which are the primary cause of all the subsequent historical events. 19th century, the century of the consequences of the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars. 20th century, the era of the collapse of the European empires and the wars of redistribution of global influence caused by the Russian Revolution, the 21st century is clearly becoming the age of globalism, struggle against the liberty of nations and redistribution of the new world. Transnational corporations and banks have spread all over the world. Media controls controlled by business groups and used in politics on a huge scale, where everything is inextricably linked to political clans and the struggle of groups for spheres of influence. This is a modern form of a new social imperialism. After the end of the gold standard, it became no longer necessary for all services and goods to be purchased with real money. With the introduction of the blank dollar printing standard and ever-increasing universal consumer credit, future incomes could be settled, moving them further and further into the future. Greed to have what you haven't earned has created a hungry civilization of consumers. The economy must grow and grow continuously, without stopping. And any stagnation leads to crisis and collapses. Increasing amounts of goods, services, and the scale of loans ensured ever-increasing predatory profits for corporations and banks. We witnessed growing exclusion. More and more wealth was concentrated in small circle of people. Chained by credits, a formerly free society became more and more dependent on both bank capital and the government. So that's when purely socialist political measures were used to preserve the stability of the system. By redistributing part of the surplus through a never-expanding welfare system, it became possible to temporarily avoid social tensions. The entire generations of lumpens and benefit takers have been raised. They do not even know what it means to work or earn money. To preserve stability of the social security system, mass immigration was attracted, destroying Western cultures and societies. It was impossible to do this without breaking the established traditions and provoking mass resistance of people. Tools were needed to fragment, divide, and control societies. On this path, LGBT and genderist ideology as a tool was a discovery of globalism. Having attracted the extreme leftist theories and practices directed toward the lowest instincts and the rejection of traditions, it was much easier to manipulate people's expectations and rule the societies. Therefore, the major blows to achieve universal control of society were directed toward the foundations of Western culture and civilization that are still capable of organized resistance toward natural family and Christianity. Absolutize real and alleged rights of any social group, no matter how small. Raise the flags of social egoism and despise everything that has been created and is sacred for centuries. Inculcate universal guilt in people, and a mad crowd will wipe out all culture and civilization. History. This started to emerge in Lithuania since the first year of its accession to the EU. By the principle of overtones windows, society was gradually being prepared for the future gender revolution. In 2004, the LGBT Center was established. In 2005, the law on equal opportunities for women and men was replaced by the law on equal opportunities, and the Office for Equal Opportunities for Women and Men was renamed into the Office of Equal Opportunities Ombudsperson. It wasn't just a change of the title. During the first years, public activists, the Association of Tolerant Youth, the New Left, were writing manifests, tried to ridicule traditional family values, organized public campaigns consisting of several individuals. These did not attract much interest from the public. After that, more and more serious forces and finances began to come into play. The financial support of the European Economic Area and the Kingdom of Norway through the programs during 2004-2009 and 2009-2014 was allocated to various non-governmental organizations established to enhance LGBT. The programs covered the so-called hate speech, the empowerment of vulnerable groups, homophobia, tolerance, and the creation of a multicultural society, promotion of equal opportunities, domestic violence, including gender-based violence, the fight against discrimination, and other topics favored by LGBT and gender activists. The Center for Journalism established by Soros, aimed at training the staff for genderism and globalist propaganda, became more popular. Open Lithuania Foundation, established by Soros, Human Rights Monitoring Institute, Diversity Development Group, Lithuanian Jewish Community, Equal Opportunities Development Center, enhanced their activities, as well as Development Center, Mental Health Perspectives, Roma Society Center, Active Citizens Fund, Amnesty International, the International LGBT Organization. So these organizations engaged into the activity which was encouraged by the Nordic Council of Ministers, the European Commission, the Ministries of Finance, Social Security and Labor of Lithuania, etc. So in 5 years, the ground was prepared for the so-called Pride parades, which began in 2010 and were intended to provoke the public and to receive further funding for the so-called activists and the formations they represent. According to the scenario of such pride marches, they were necessarily held in the central streets. Slogans and unconstitutional demands annoying majority of society and used were also possible, in particular exotic sexual orientations, primitive signs of lewd sexuality were often displayed for the public in public places, and even the children watching. Most of all, it was expected to receive a public outcry and a natural emotional response immediately captured and broadcasted to the world by pre-trained pseudo-journalists. Every detail was blown up to infinity and continuously broadcasted as a proof of discrimination of the LGBT community in Lithuania in order to get more finance for victims. And so the time has come for attacks against the main legal obstacle, the Constitution. In the undefined constitutional concept of the family, the lawyers serving LGBT organizations have found a tiny legal space to legitimize their claims. This requires showing marriage between a man and a woman and the natural family as only one of the possible options of the family, and legitimizing partnership as a gender-independent legal form of cohabitation, whose rights and status would be effectively equal to the family. And then only the matters of legal technique would remain: to recognize same-sex partnerships as family relations under the pretext of ensuring equal human rights. So the first serious attack took place in 2011, the pretext of which was the family policy concept approved by the Seimas resolution in 2008. The Socdems, led by Julius Sabatauskas and Sysas, submitted a statement to the Constitutional Court saying that only a concept of a family-based marriage is enshrined in the concept. According to the concept, a man and a woman living together but not married, as well as single parents raising children, were not considered family and its members, that is, unmarried men and women with children or adopted children. And the Constitutional Court recognized this concept as unconstitutional. Moreover, two significant provisions emerged in the resolution. According to one of them, the Constitution also, quote, protects and defends families other than those based on marriage, inter alia the joint life of an unmarried man and woman. That inter alia, which means among other things, presupposes a logical question. What is behind the other than, which is not cohabitation of a man and woman? In response to this question, the Constitutional Court presented its famous definition. The constitutional concept of family is based on the mutual responsibility, understanding, emotional attachment, help, and similar relationship of family members, and the voluntary decision to assume certain rights and duties that is based on the content of the relationship, and the form of expression of this relationship has no fundamental significance for the constitutional concept of family. It is quite clear from this concept that it is perfect for any cohabitation relationship. According to it, a family could be, for instance, dorm roommates, soldiers or criminals sitting in the same cell who also have mutual responsibility. And what is most important and what need to be proven, this definition is completely suitable for same-sex couples. After this decision of the court, instead of correcting the inconsistency of the family policy concept, it was decided to change the constitution itself, aligning it with the concept, thereby removing the basis of inconsistency. An amendment to Article 38 of the Constitution was urgently proposed, stating that family is created by marriage and also arises from motherhood and fatherhood. And on June 19, 2012, it was adopted, with only one vote missing. Another attempt to adopt the amendment based on the principle no marriage, no family was in 2013. As many as 107 deputies of the Seimas approved it, and that was sufficient for its adoption. Practically all members of the Conservative Party signed this amendment. The same Conservative Party that has now, just a decade later, changed its position to the complete opposite. However, due to the sabotage of the Law on and Order Committee headed by Sabatauskas, the acceptance procedure was delayed for almost 3 years. Voting took place only in 2016 and the amendment was not adopted again. 219, when the Constitutional Court opened the door even wider to same-sex families, under another pretext, instead of just resolving the legal dispute as to whether same-sex marriages registered in other countries are mandatory in Lithuania, the concept of family was adjusted again, introducing the statement into the constitutional doctrine, unlike, quote, unlike the constitutional concept of marriage, the constitutional concept of family is, among other things, gender neutral. That's it. The job was done. The legal ground for same-sex marriage was cleared. Through the controlled media, the public was instilled with an imitation of public opinion that is favorable to LGBT aspirations. A large part of society was already used to this, tired of constant propaganda, and adapted to the situation. The Constitutional Court, headed by Dainius Žalimas, who held office illegally for almost a year after the end of his term, would have rejected any laws legalizing protests against genderism. However, this is the only and most important thing the Constitutional Court could not do, to adopt LGBT and gender ideology laws. The long-awaited historical opportunity to do that appeared after the 2020 elections to the parliament. The new Seimas majority in the coalition program provided for everything: the ratification of the Istanbul Convention and the criminalization of hate speech, the legalization of same-sex partners and marriage, and the right to adopt. No one expected the resistance of the society. which was opposed and frightened by the restrictions of the pseudo-pandemic, and it was hoped that everything would be implemented quickly. Yet, our society unexpectedly and spontaneously rose in protest to the Great March for the Defense of Families. Political and economic power of globalism stood behind the authorities, as well as European Commission, the World Economic Forum, and the so-called Lithuanian humility and our weak-willed excellencies. A waking society had nothing but its hands, minds, and hearts. However, their traditions, families, children, and faith, that's what they had. And what has been achieved? None of their projects have been approved so far. Everything is now thrown into a decisive battle. Even a primitive and cynical manipulation of people's feeling, claiming that the one who is for traditional values is for Russia and against Ukraine, although in the constitution of Ukraine since 1996 the prohibition of same-sex marriages is established. It does not allow either homosexual partnerships or LGBT propaganda in schools. Neo-colonial ideological blackmail continues. The events and demands organized by the LGBT are regularly joined by ambassadors from other countries. The ideology of genderism is unacceptable to the vast majority of the citizens of the Republic of Lithuania. Therefore, such actions of ambassadors promote negative attitudes towards the values they promote and in countries they represent. According to the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, diplomats must contribute to the development of friendly relations between states, regardless of the diversity of their political and social systems. The demands of LGBT communities in Lithuania are a subject of public debates. The majority of people categorically oppose them, and decisions are exclusively the prerogative of the citizens of our country. According to the international law, diplomatic missions have no right to interfere in the international affairs of states. Yet, a few days ago, 22 foreign ambassadors made an official appeal again, putting pressure on lawmakers and demanding the adoption of the LGBT promoting civil union law. Such actions not only violate Article number 41 of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, which prohibits diplomats from interfering in the internal affairs of the countries where they reside, but also harm the interests of the Lithuanian states. Resistance to the neo-Marxist gender revolution has started in the Western world, and many issues are no longer considered by the authorities. America has Florida, where genderism has no place, and more states are joining this process. Poland has many municipalities that have declared themselves LGBT-free zones, and even the European Union, which has been blackmailing those municipalities for a long time with restrictions on the allocation of funds, has come to terms with it and cancelled its sanctions. The Lithuanian family movement is also starting the process. We have already began to submit draft declarations declaring municipalities free from LGBT and gender ideology for the approval of municipal councils through our elected members of municipal councils. Every normal person has two questions. The first, why are they, the globalists, in such a hurry, both in Lithuania and throughout Europe? The answer is simple. Because the favorable conditions created for the final establishment of the dictatorship of genderism are temporary. The ruling coalition in Lithuania is already beginning to fall apart. In Europe, after the Italian elections, the threshold of 4 states with 35% of the population of the European Union needed by the blocking minority of the European Parliament has become critical close. Another similar elections in any major EU country could be decisive, and the very possibility of civilizational annihilation decision-making in Brussels would be liquidated. That's why it is in a hurry. Both the UN and EU projects and directives are being feverishly pushed, providing for the forced legitimization of globalist processes. Another question, another arising question, what will happen? There is no one in the world except the God who could answer this question. One thing is clear, we are only at the very beginning of the process. The plates of global influences have started to move. The redistribution of world powers has begun, and neither nations nor people will be spared there. But it is equally clear that in this process, globalism has exhausted itself and is losing. There is even a tiny chance that the centers of global power may see a future of civilizational cultural defeat and abandon this long-term useless project. In the second case, when the inevitable critical moment emerges, direct and primitive dictatorship would need to be chosen. Then the words of Frank Zappa would be fulfilled. The illusion of freedom will last as long as it is profitable to continue the illusion. Then, when the illusion becomes too expensive, they will simply collect the scenery, pull back the curtains, take out the tables and chairs, and you will see nothing but bricks on the back wall of the theater. The movement of Lithuanian families published the declaration Lithuania First. It states that existence of the state is no longer possible without fundamental reforms restoring direct democracy. This requires to temporarily forget the interests of individual social groups and mobilize all progressive forces and leaders of society, parties, communities, associations, and congregations for one common goal. And I believe that the future of Europe also depends on rising to such action. The Conference of Conservative Political Actions, which brings together the right-wing forces of European states and societies, the establishment of the Anti-Davos Alliance, initiated by Jordan Peterson in London, the increasing number of anti-globalist organizations and their closer cooperation give hope that this action has already begun. But something else is happening. We are no longer surprised to see again and again, every day, so many slaves among us. Slaves who still love their chains. We just have to do what we have to do. Each generation, each nation and state has its own Thermopyles, Sparta and Athens. Our children and the future of our homelands are behind us. Freedom is not a gift or grace, and no one gives it for nothing. Democratic societies have as much as they can take. Let's take it. I still believe it is possible.
Thank you so much. I'm going to give floor to the next speaker from the Czech Republic, who is the legal analyst and the representative of the Alliance for Family, Mr. Mikolas Tomas Misterka, who will deliver the presentation, Being Unopposed to the Natural Rights is Not Enough, Czech Republic's Example. The floor is yours.
Hello, and I'm Mikolas Misterka, as was said before, and I am from Alliance for Family, Czech Republic. Firstly, I would like to thank the organizers of this conference for inviting me, and I would like to also thank you, to everyone who is listening to me here in the room or online, now or later, because there are beautiful speeches throughout the day, today and yesterday as well. And I am honored that you made time and found my presentation worthwhile, or my speech worthwhile, or worth of your time. So at the start, I will just shortly introduce Alliance for Family. I will introduce the theme of my speech and introduce the title or the name of the speech as I given it, and I will also then talk about the things from the presentation, what parts are there, that there will be the part dedicated to the judiciary, to the civil service, and many more, as I will explain in a minute. So, from the start, I am from Alliance for Family, which is a pro-family organization which lobbies in our parliament for the pro-family policies for many themes. The main theme in Czech Republic right now is the same-sex marriage. And we had 100,000 people supporting our petition to define marriage as a relationship between man and woman in our constitution. We also oppose gender ideology in education, call for flaws of transgender healthcare, and many, many other connected issues. As for me, I am responsible for the legal side of things as a legal student on our law faculty in Czech Republic. I write either articles about gender ideology in schools, I monitor EU agenda in our parliament, and I write down whatever legal filling needs to be done. If it doesn't matter if it's to secure the objective reporting from our public media, reports for members of our parliament, and many more. I also believe that my speech will be complementary to some of the speeches that were here yesterday and also today, as there were many great general ideas, and I will bring you some of the examples from the Czech perspective of how these dangerous ideologies may influence the state of the human rights in a state. As for the title of my presentation or of my speech, which is being unopposed to human rights is not enough, Czech Republic's example, I found out that there was some confusion about whether I think that I will talk about all of the great things which we have done, but that will unfortunately not be the case. The case or the reasoning behind this title is actually that the Czech Republic is somewhere in the middle on the natural rights. We do not have strong conservative movement in the same sense that the Poland has, for example. But there is also not terrible from the point of perspective that we do not have some such terrible initiatives as we talked about before in Scotland or in Canada. Some of the laws which are passing in there are truly not the things which would be promoted in here. And so we do not have, as I said before, the strong conservative movement like the Poland. At the same time, we carried ourselves some sad memories from the communist regime years, which make us generally reluctant to support some liberating ideas about human beings, about the human nature, which are an important part of many so-called fake human rights. So whenever we hear about, or many people in Czech Republic, when they do hear about liberating somebody from the chains of society, biological sex, marriage, we know, and many of us know, that actually this means breaking from the chains of reality, which is an impossible task to do, and it's foolish to try so. So we are not hit by the progressive plague of human mind, as some of the countries in the West are, but at the same time, we are not actively supporting natural rights in all the ways which we and Alliance for Family would like to do so. But I will argue that this sort of neutral state of things is in no way beneficial for us, as there are many institutions which more often than not are filled with people who are opposing the natural rights. That might be, for example, the judicial system, civil service, academia, international corporations, and many more. The elite of the state, and I mean this one completely neutrally, just like the people who work in this institution. So this presentation is about how being neutral or passively opposed to these fake human rights is not enough, and also some ways to change it. I will first take care of the legal field, mainly the judiciary. Then I will move to the civil service and state grants, and then I will move also about some examples from the Czech Republic about the influence of academia and of the foreign diplomacy on the state of human rights. So, but mainly on the legal field and mainly on the civil service and the state grants and giving out money to progressive organizations. And depending on how much time will be left at the end, that will decide how many things will actually cover in this presentation. So, about the legal field, I of course can't skip my own field, as the students who leave law faculties are of a huge importance, and I do not say it to make me sound important, but they unfortunately, they directly influence the way the law is implemented, they directly influence the law is interpreted, as every ministry must have lawyers, every international corporation has a legal department, and of course, courts are filled with lawyers. And how do they think of the natural rights is very much important for the way that these rights are implemented in a country. Firstly, I want to talk about one court case, which came to our Constitutional Court and was decided in the year 2017, which was very much negatively impacting the child's human rights on this issue. The story goes as this one. The two men from California brought the child via surrogacy from a surrogacy mother, and one of them is father of said child, but they do not know which one. They have intentionally done it, so they themselves do not know who of them is the father of the child. So, and they moved from the United States to Czech Republic, and they demanded to be recognized as child's parents, as they were recognized so in the USA, or at least in California. And so they demanded to be recognized as the child's parents, both of them, in Czech Republic. They brought it to the Czech state bodies, and they were denied. So they filed a petition to a court, and the courts at the end, our system of course denied their motion. Last one which denied this one case was the Supreme Court, and they denied such motion on the basis of public order. We do not have same-sex marriage. We do not have it before. We do not have it now. So, and also our legal system is as a whole made that there is, for example, on our birth certificates that you have the column for mother and a father, so they said that this is like nonsense from the sense of our legal system to write them both in as a parents, also because like the documents and so on are simply not made of that, and they thought that this one is actually, this one decision would be against the public order. One note that our Supreme Court doesn't have the same role as the US Supreme Court. We have a constitutional court for that, which tackles the issues of the Constitution and the human rights, which is the court where they went next, these two same-sex parents. And their request, their motion was granted by the Constitutional Court. And what's even more interesting about this decision is the reasoning behind the decision and how it was written. The Constitutional Court directly stated that there was no reason not to recognize both men as parents, which would also take into account, or which would also consider the best interests of the child. That was pretty much a direct quote from this decision. And they also remarked that such reasons or such questions which could arise could be the question of child's relationship or relations to biological parents, or need to stop human trafficking. Well, the Constitutional Court did not have questions about it, but I do have some questions about that and about this one. Firstly, this practice, the surrogacy, it enables, and from its definition, it cuts off the children from its mother by design, and it's a decision which is done for the rest of their lives, and it's the decision which is done before they are even born. So it's in our alliance, we take it as the very much threat to human rights of the children and of the women as well. And also, they are now living in the home with two men, which one of them is the father, but they do not know who of them, the children. This case was about one of them. There were two separate cases or two separate legal proceedings for both of them. But of course, it impacted both of them pretty much the same. So it was also like an interesting question to ask, why was the decision not to know who is the father taken by the both men, whether they thought that knowing that one of them is actually the biological parent would somehow change their perspective of a child of one of them and there might arise some problems, and whether they have asked whether these questions may arise for the children as well in its upbringing, and whether the child would actually think of this as a problem and so on. Whether maybe the child would behave differently toward one of them and they did not know, or they themselves towards each other or towards the children. So this is the question which was presumably not asked in this case, and it was not asked by the court as well. The Supreme Court before decided that the surrogacy is not a violation of a public order if it's at least in the case of like the California and when it has some legal framework and so on. And the Constitutional Court added that they did not find this decision to be reviewed, or this reasoning about this surrogacy, as in our state, the surrogacy in Czech Republic, it's not really legal, it's not directly stated like what is the surrogacy and that it needs to be protected and so on, but also it's not directly forbidden or prohibited. So this is also the way with which the court thought as well. And the Constitutional Court, and this is absolutely cynical, at least for me, then also added that this case is in no way endorsing surrogacy. Maybe in its reasoning it's not, maybe they have not written it in there, but it's very much, the judge very much well knew what she was doing while she was writing this one, and when she was writing this one decision. This is the step towards protecting the people who buy children via this practice, and maybe it's not written out in the reasoning, but the outcomes of these decisions are very much the same, whether they do write it in or whether they do not write it in at all. And right now there is also new law was filed at the was introduced to the House of Parliament, which is putting surrogacy under the criminal code, into the criminal code, under the paragraph or under the Criminal Act of Human Trafficking, like explicitly writing it in there. So that is one thing which we very much do support, and we very much do believe that this practice is terrible, especially for the children. And so, by the way, the judge reporter on this case is now at the European Court for Human Rights in Strasbourg. And on that note of this decision by our Constitutional Court, the courts around the Czech Republic started thinking of ways to put same-sex couples in a birth certificate, which, as I said before, was not made for it very much. So I did not review the cases, but I saw some articles about how some state bodies or how the courts tried to put the two people of the same sex, the partners, both under the mother section, so there were two mothers and the column for father was empty, or that there was some tries to put it in the note section at the end, one of the parents, or one of the social parents at least, with this one. And at the end, in this year, the Ministry of Interior, or the Minister of Interior, who is for such ideas, we can say, who supports the LGBT agenda, created a new second form of the birth certificate, which we have. So now, as it stands right now, we will have a birth certificate where there will be written mother and father, and the second form of the certificate where there will be written parent and parent, this one. So it's directly, so in the few years, also from the big part, very much thanks to this decision, we will have the state policy shifted from protecting the bond of the children to its natural parents and to at least generally follow the natural relationships between the father and mother and the child, to at least do not directly contradict them. It took the position, and the state bodies took the position, to actually protect the people who get the children, no matter how much immoral or damaging for the children this way might be. So this is one very important case. This is one very important case how the courts, which are supposed to protect the natural rights, actually undermined it and very much helped the way and paved the way for this decision. It's important to add that the minister who was introducing this idea, that he was actually saying that the reason why this second form of the birth certificate is being issued is because of the courts cases, because of the courts decisions, because it's of course made it sound logically that they say that there must be some way to recognize two parents, so we must have a way to recognize them in this one certificate as well. So this is unfortunately the case of that he has said that our expert independent court decided that, so we have to follow it, although he did not have to do it at all, but it was only pretty much the last way, last way to solidify this decision into our legal system. And that was not the first time. I will also talk about it a little bit about in the second part of my presentation, or the next part of our presentation, that this was not the first time this idea was being issued, was introduced. It was maybe 2 to 3 years before. Some ministers tried it as well, pretty much the same idea. And we stopped it at the time. We stopped that, but unfortunately it seems that this time the minister is putting much more work and effort into defending this decision than the previous one. So one thing from this, that it's a very much dangerous thing to interpret the right for a family life or for a parent to interpret it as the right of the adult people or of the parents or the social parents to get a child, no matter what way it may seem, no matter what way will it be. One thing which is very much important, and I always hear in this case that we are being accused sometimes that when we are talking this way, that we want to take the children away from its at least social parents, from the people who are bringing them up for many years, and then we would like to take them away. That's of course not true. Nobody wants to just come into the family and tell them, well, you were raising these children for 10 years, but now we have found out that you were. Now that we have found out about this one thing, we will take it away and put it somewhere else into some other family and so on. Nobody is saying that. We are just saying that this way of protecting the ways to get to children which are damaging to children are not right and should not be actively protected by the law. And also, so therefore, I would like to make an appeal to make sure to influence the young lawyers, to work with them if you have an NGO, non-governmental organization, to make them part of your teams, to use programs such as the ADF has, Alliance Defending Freedom for Young Lawyers, which they can take part in and improve their legal skills and their sense for what the human rights are and how to defend them. Our vice president went to a program. It was very much a beneficial thing for him. And so make sure to influence the future lawyers, judges, state attorneys or prosecutors, judges, state attorneys, and the attorneys as well, because in all of these problems which we are solving out today, the legal part of things is very much important, and even one very great attorney can make a difference. We know several lawyers, or one lawyer at least, or an attorney who has several key victories in the fight for the autonomy of the churches, or against the decisions which violate this basic restriction on the government to not interfere in the church, in the religious freedoms. So only one of them, which is very much skilled and is very much known on how to make these things, can make a difference for people's lives. Next part of our presentation will be called the taxpayers' money in the wrong hands, and that will take mainly the civil service and also a little bit of academia. So one of the big tools of our opponents is the redistribution of the taxpayers' money, of the public money, to the progressive organization. So they can use those money to put forward their agenda, whether it's LGBT ideology, gender ideology, however you want to call it. So in some examples from the Czech Republic on how this control might work. And we all know about the EU's rage against Hungary when they decided to keep gender ideology out of schools and prohibited promoting gender transitions at schools, and etc., and call it a huge violation of the human rights. I've also found out on the internet magazine of my university, Charles University in Prague. I think it was last year that they put forward that they have done gender audit, or they have done audit of the equal opportunities at the university as the preparation to put forward the gender action plan, or the equal opportunities plan at our school. And the reasoning for that, it was bluntly stated at like this from the first to third sentence, was that it is mandatory now to have a gender action plan or this kind of plan at university to be able to get your scientific research financed by the EU. It was bluntly stated that way, that this is the reason we are putting it forward. And I do not know about the academia in your countries, but at least in the Czech Republic, the academia is usually very sensitive about these issues, about government having an interference or putting out an interference into the scientific freedom and to the freedom of research. However, this time, I pretty much did not hear about it, that they are putting this thing which is very important for the universities, to which projects and which researchers will get supported financially and which will not. But the Charles University did not protest, or any other university which I have heard about in Czech Republic, and they put it explicitly on their website that it has been placed for this reason, and also they boasted about how much work they have put into it, in the sense that they have done this gender audit in order to make sure that this one equal opportunities plan or the gender action plan will be actually thorough, that it will be actually solid, and talk about and put there also one sentence that some universities did it without it and so on, but we actually put work into it, so we have actually made sure to please our EU overlords as best as it is possible. And they did not put forward any sort of protest about that this one thing would be, might be a very damaging thing for the independence of the scientific research. So control over the state grants and of the support is one of the most powerful tool of the progressive school of thought. It makes sure also that when explicitly woke politicians are out of office, their influence will still be significant, they will still get money, the organization which put forward the progressive agenda will still get money, that they will still get influence from this one. And one of those things is done by infiltrating the civil service, the ministries, the bureaucratic bodies, and so on. Of course, this is also done by the EU. The lobbyists for the same-sex marriage in Czech Republic got a huge amount of money from the EU, more than we, their main rival, make in the same period of time, just from this one income which they got. And so I will talk right here about the international treaties, the grants, and the high-ranking bureaucrats in the positions of power, which may change the way the money and the influence is being distributed from the state. First, just a short note for the international treaties, that the best way to put this forward is through an international treaty, because once you sign it and once you ratify it, it's very hard to back out of it. So today there was already mentioned the Istanbul Convention, which says in its Article 8 that parties shall allocate appropriate financial and human resources for the adequate implementation of integrated policies, measures and programs, etc., etc., including those carried out by non-governmental organizations and civil society. And also there is, of course, a part about how this plan must be executed also in the school curriculum and in schools and so on. So we very much know who would these money go to if this was implemented in Czech Republic, which still it was not ratified, this Istanbul Convention, and which way would the goals of the convention would be interpreted and in which way and against whom. So the goal is clear: to make the progressive NGOs get money and influence when they are politicians of the same opinion spectrum are not in power. I was also watching other things when the Ministry of Education put forward an action plan, a gender action plan, and it was interesting because at that time there was a minister in there from the party, and he himself seemed minded in a similar way, like-minded, that they were not truly conservative, they were not truly progressive at all. This was not truly the agenda which they took forward. But this one plan was done, and it was done by inviting members of the academia, pretty much the wokest member of the academia, who consulted or made or written out this one program. And so I believe that if I would go with this gender action plan which they put forward and go with it to the voters of said party for which he was minister, and told them about this plan and whether they would vote for it or no, that would be overwhelmingly said no, that this is not truly things maybe they even take that they do not even take care of that, and so on. So there is this gender action plan, and these plans are made for years in advance. If you said the gender action plan was made in the way that was from the year 2020 to year 2024 or 2025. It's just made for many years in advance, and so if the government changes, this plan still does not change, and these policies are still being implemented by the civil service on its own. So there are actually, which I want to talk about, the three types of politicians or ministers or politicians as a whole. There is the progressive one, the one which I talked right now, which is not really for, not really actively against that, and the conservatives, which also might in some way not protect people from these programs. The progressive one is sure that they will put a lot of power and resources into defending these programs if you attack them for them and anything like that. If there is also, but unfortunately, if there is also these sort of neutral politicians, the institutions around him will still work in the same way as they did before, when they will not be opposed. And so that was actually the issue, as I said before, with the birth certificates. That before there was a politician who did not have it as important part of his agenda, this LGBT agenda about surrogacy and so on. So we made we used pressure on him. We pressured him thanks to our supporters and so on to write on the ministry, to write to the minister, to write to the like-minded politicians, so they could speak out against that. And we stopped that because the minister just said that this thing was not worth his times and effort so much as it seemed as it would take to actually put this forward. But unfortunately, this new Ministry of the Interior is very much standing against that, and he's making pledges that he will truly see this one through. So even though we had a huge amount of, as we know, a huge amount of people, of our supporters, actually writing to the politicians and to the ministry and trying to influence the ministry and the minister to put this thing out, to stop implementing this idea, it still seems that they will very much likely still go through with it. So that was what I was also meaning by the title of the speech, that that being unopposed to human rights is not enough. There must be clearly and explicitly a politician who is standing for the natural rights, a politician who is willing to spend his time on this one and who takes it as important. And there is unfortunately a chance that even though you will get a conservative politician, that they will not be, for many and plethora of reasons, willing to put forward their efforts and to put forward their time for these things. So that, for example, we had some politicians saying lately that the same-sex marriage should be passed, the law about the same-sex marriage should get passed through our parliament, because, well, it's taking too much time and we want to get on the other issues and we want to just stop taking care about that, which if you are a politician for many, many years and you saw how these policies work and you saw how this movement against natural rights work and you are truly thinking in this way, I believe that there is a huge problem in actually, like, in seeing that this politician might not actually see what this movement is about, that they do not know how they work, which is very much important in fighting them, or maybe they might not be that much actually interested, or they do not understand the importance of the family for the state. And they should definitely know that as a politician. So do not think that just because they are like-minded people on good positions, that they will always take your stance and they will always protect the rights as they should be. We had, for example, right now we have a government which is split up, that there are some ministers and some politicians of the coalition which are actually very good at protecting the natural rights, actually quite conservative. But we have also some politicians who are of the opposite opinions, and so there was also a thing that we have right now, position which is called, probably best translated as the government's commissioner for human rights. And the person on this position, even though there is many government politicians who are actually very good and very much conservative, she actually written a Facebook post where she attacked hospital and a sexologist which was giving presentation there about transgender healthcare, and he was negative about some of its aspects. We know that this expert is not actually like explicitly friend of the alliance or ally of the alliance, that he sometimes put also things which we do very much disagree with, but he just talked negatively about some of its aspects of the transgender medicine, and he raised doubts about some of its aspects, and she actually called him out on the Facebook post and told the hospital, the most expert body which can be on these issues, to delete these materials from their website. And it was, I do believe it was actually also an older presentation, that it was not like done in that weekend, so that this was very, very much a long time ago. But for some reason, she thought that this would be a great idea and that this would be a thing which she should do to protect the rights of the trans youth and so on. So this is also very much important, not only where the money go, but which important state, which important, what way do the important bureaus and important bodies of the state are run by. So also, I have heard that I think it was yesterday, that you do not have drag queen readings for children here in Lithuania, or at least not very much. It's not very much a theme, so we find out that there will be actually, at least as far as we know, the first or one of the first drag queen readings for children about the queer themes and about several sexual identities and so on. And it's actually supported by the public money as well, or at least it's Pride Week event in which it takes place. So this is very much a thing which people must take interest in. Where are their money going, even from their state, or from their municipalities, from the city councils, where are they going? I would also encourage you to watch the Christopher Rufo is the name of the political strategist in the United States, who came on the board of the public university in Florida, which had very much woke policies and changed it. So that is one very much thing to look for and to maybe inspire yourself. Also, when you have the power over the elected bodies, do not hesitate to use them to advance the agenda of yours, to protect the natural rights, to cut the progressive organizations from the government's money and so on, because you should not let your money, actually, the government's money or the taxpayers' money, to be used to paint you as a villain, as a homophobic or transphobic. You have absolutely every right to do so. And you will, of course, get attacked by the so-called human rights activists but you will get attacked absolutely in no matter what you do, and you should also make sure that your politicians know that and they are standing firmly behind the natural rights and that they will stand firmly to protect them. I will just make also a short note about the diplomacy and the business corporations. Unfortunately, not all money which will go to the progressive organizations can be stopped, even, I would not like to say it this way, but as simply as just by changing the government. There was recently a new ambassador to the Czech Republic, who one of the first things which he done was to go on Twitter on his first weeks or short few months in his position, to go on Twitter and to go on the interview in the media to talk about how the Czech people should definitely pass the same-sex marriage laws and to pass the same-sex marriage. And he does it in the way, it's like interesting thing that is definitely sovereign ambassador of the sovereign state, but sometimes, especially if they do this one thing so with such conviction, that it seems pretty much like they are just arrogantly lecturing the Eastern Europeans on how the human rights should be actually fought for and how they should be actually implemented. So this is a thing which is, but it's not actually like his mistake that he is doing it. It's absolutely one of the important actually goals of foreign diplomacy of many nations to pass and to support this agenda in other states. So it's not just this, just the problem of somebody talking about it, it's problem of actually supporting those organizations financially. And it's a big part of foreign diplomacy of many states. And of course, the companies donate a lot of money to the LGBT organizations. You definitely know a lot of them, which use their money to put forward and to support these agendas. So you will have, unfortunately, So you will have, unfortunately, at this time and probably for some time in the future, to work against this kind of money, which you can't stop in any way, pretty much, because you can tell, of course, the corporations what to do, and you have very limited tools to work against these type of money. So we will have to disrupt the functioning, disrupt those initiatives, as we talked about the birth certificates, about the first try, to make it just as costly for the people who want to put these things forward, especially in the government, as possible, and to make as many organizations withdraw their support from these projects, for calling out the flaws in their ideology of the LGBT or gender ideology, even though they might have much more sufficient financing, and you will be kind of working against actually the against big financial power. And so that is the reason why I put forward and why I would like to say that the active support of the natural rights is very much important. It's very much important to make as many people from the general population take care of these things and to take care of these rights in order to stop those agendas, as well as taking care of your elites. Again, I'm saying it in absolutely neutral manner, the people who have the power over implementation of the human rights and interpreting the human rights in your state. So thank you everyone who found time to listen to me, and big thank for the organizers of this conference for letting me speak here, and thank you very much, and remember, you are on the right side of history and we will win. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And the final presentation today is to be delivered by Marek Novak, Director of Development of the Institute of Ladislav Hanus and the organizer of the Conservative Summit from Slovakia. The topic is Best Slovakian Central Europe Practices of Pro-Family Policies and Fight Against Woke Ideologies.
to be here. Thank you for invitation. It's a big honor and pleasure. My name is Marek Novak. I come from Slovakia and I represent here our Ladislav Hanus Institute and Ladislav Hanus Fellowship. So I would like to briefly inform you about our activities and also how we approach important topics we are discussing here today. And also we have been discussing yesterday. And then I would like to tell the situation or our experiences and some kind of best practices from Slovakia. So I will just show some illustration pictures. So just a moment, please. Can you show me this to the screen? Ah, I see. Close. Okay. No, okay. Okay, thank you. I will need it. So this is basically the very important event last year for us. We have had already 20th anniversary of our Ladislav Hanus Fellowship. DNA of this fellowship started more than 20 years ago, inspired by American Witherspoon Institute, which is making program for young Christian or people interested in the intellectual wisdom and deepness of Christian and Catholic teaching. And this is actually for more than 20 years also still the DNA of our fellowship. We, during these 20 years, through this formation academic program, passed more than 600 people. And well, it's the motto we have chosen from the Bible. It's motto for our fellowship. It's Matthew 5:16. Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. So the vision also of our institute which is coming from our fellowship, and it's more focused to public involvement. It's to combine faith with reason, to cultivate Christian culture, and to courageously promote conservative principles in public life. So we got a great inspiration, and also we see very good motivation from the quote of Saint John Paul II. He said in 1996, after he visited Slovakia, following statement: Slovakia has a great role to play in the building of the Europe of the third millennium. Remember that. It is called to offer its very significant contribution to the true progress of the European continent through its traditions, its culture, its martyrs and confessors, as well as through the living forces of its new generation. So we consider it very beautiful and very strong, and of course it's a huge challenge to try to fulfill that. So during this more than 20 years, this educational program is following the community of more than 600 people, from which also many marriages arrived, and also with broad families with many children, and lively community, depending from coming from these curses and this life community. This pillar of community, it's very important because also when I travel abroad, I often hear like the Christians today, or people who are not satisfied with mainstream culture, mainstream narratives, often feel like isolated, or they are some kind of different from mainstream culture and society, and it tends often that people are starting to self-censorship themselves and start to being or living like double life. You have family life where you follow all these beautiful principles and values and compatible with your religion or with your conservative perspectives. And then you have like public life when many people just don't want to be in conflict with the whole world every day, and just maybe are not able to go against all these strong narratives we are facing today in various parts of society and culture. So we consider it very important to have like a great and working network of these communities, because then you can strengthen each other, support each other, and be more effective, and be and living these principles not only in private life, but bring them and all the important topics, narratives, and solutions for the challenges also to the society. So we have actually two kinds of activities focused inside our fellowship, like spiritual renewals, these educational courses, and every month at least every month we gather on a day of fellowship with Holy Mass discussions on important topics and so. And then we have public activities, which I will speak about in a while. So this formation program, which is kind of let's say the process of new members who are able then to become the full members of our fellowship. They are studying the important texts from ancient philosophers like Aristotle or the classic Catholic thinkers like St. Augustine, through the all the medieval and like Saint Thomas Aquinas until the today encyclic of popes and the magisterium of the church. But also, of course, our students are challenged by the secular thinkers and all the new ideologies, also ideologies of 20th century, the totalitarian, communist, nationalist, or old liberalism, but also the new ideologies like progressive ideology and neo-Marxism, cultural Marxism, and so on. So our students are meeting like every week during this 1-year intensive program, and they need to read quite a broad amount of this text, and then they are discussing with a moderator these topics deep inside, and they have to also write the essays and have these moderation meetings where they can go through the topics from perspective of 12 young people. The number of 12, it's also like from the biblical context, but it's a good number to have to build an intensive community during this year between young people, and to have an accurate number for discussion. So basically this formation program is meant for people not only to politics, but to broader range of public life, for media, for NGOs and civil society leaders, but as well as business leaders, or we have even a few priests who passed our formation program. So during this academic year, our students not only are meeting in like every week meetings, but also they go on like academic weekends, and they meet important personalities from, or experienced personalities from public or conservative public life in Slovakia. There is then the exchange of important experiences from the previous generations, and they can get inspiration for like understanding broader context of today's challenges. So after the few years of these educational programs, our leaders were inspired actually by a few Polish public festivals, and created like a Hanus Days festival, which is an academic festival with full of discussion and cultural events, which is trying to bring like important and inspirational speakers from all over the world. It has been already like 13 years of this festival. We make it in Bratislava and in the east of Slovakia, in Košice, and we have always the actual topic. We are discussing actual topics, but also bringing the inspiration from the broad and deep wisdom base of Christian culture. So the point is not only to like fight against the bad or dangerous ideologies of today, but bring positive alternatives, bring all these fruitful narratives and fruitful thoughts which are on which actually our civilization was based, and now is shifting away from them. So to better understand our roots and bring them back to public life. So we started also to organize a Catholic conference focused especially to women and to women's spirituality and practical life, because we consider it also important to bring like positive alternative in comparison with what women are listening today as a mainstream offer for them, like at first the career and family later, and this individualism. So we are trying to bring some inspiration which is holistic from the Christian perspective. Then 2 years ago, we started to organize Conservative Summit, which is like international event, mainly focused on people and leaders, conservative and Christian leaders from politics, culture, churches, and as well civil society and all these stakeholders. And every year we have like politicians and intellectuals and church representatives and civil society representatives from Central Europe and also from other European countries, trying to make it a more international event every year. And it's the only like conference or summit in Slovakia with explicitly Christian and conservative values and focus. So we are also issuing the Verbum journal for Christian culture, and the goal is to have the young and middle generation of conservative thinking and Christian thinking people to form on the intellectual way the ideas and formulate the thesis which then after in this world of ideas are formulated later can be also in a practical way be applied in public life. So it's very important to think not only in a political way, as we are trying to not be only activist organization. Of course, activism and fighting against bad things is very important, but in broader cultural aspects, as I think more of you are familiar with the strategy of neo-Marxists or progressives, that you have to go in a longer perspective through the institutions, through the education, through the built institution which will be affecting society for a longer time than is one parliamentary period. And that's why it's very important to work into the culture in the broader aspect. Of course, I don't mean only art, but I mean culture as an environment and as an environment of thoughts and narratives we are all facing, and we are all part of it. So along with these big events like Hanus Days Festival or Conservative Summit, we make also some regular every month meetings and talk shows in Bratislava. One format is more on the world of ideas and theoretical, and the Conservative Forum is more practical, because we are trying to establish also regular dialogue with politicians, and the problem, of course, is not only formation of politics to have politicians with solid values and with values they will not go away when they will be under pressure, but there is very important also formation of citizens and voters, because many people, even from conservative or Christian part of society today, just don't realize many challenges, and it's very important to bring this explanation, put light on it, and show the real consequences if we will not act, what will happen with our society. So more information about our fellowship you will find also on this page, and I would like to continue with some examples of good practice from Slovakia, or what we have learned from our activities and with other stakeholders we have. We can say that almost every Christian or conservative institution in Slovakia have some of our absolvents. So what we are trying to build now is something like working ecosystem of organizations which will be able to coordinate and to have to be able to react on actual challenges with and every organization need to have some specialization, and then we can have better coordination. So this is the thing we need also on a European scale, not only Central European, but connect these actors and institutions. And we need to know about each other, which are our strong focuses, and help each other. So I suggest you, when I was speaking about our formation course, I will for a while come back to that because we have a precious experience. It was also mentioned yesterday, but the father from Lithuania, we have also precious experience of underground church with the resistance to totalitarianism. And it was also mentioned the broader story, if you are interested in this experience from Central Europe, in a great book of our friend Rod Dreher, Live Not by Lies. And there is also recipe for the soft totalitarianism we are facing today. So this experiences of small but well connected and solid network of fellowships or communities is absolutely vital to keep resilience against these new ideologies, and to be not isolated with auto-censorship, but be like well-organized, creative minority, as Pope Benedict XVI was speaking about as well. So when I come to some practical experiences in Slovakia, these topics came really hot. We can say like 10 or 15 years ago, when the activists and people who were active in various council or giving petitions or comments to legislative process realized that very controversial or dangerous things are coming through various so-called human rights strategies in our government, and actually these were often held or were promoted and processed through quite not democratic process. So we realize that often it can happen that these so-called councils, which can give some advices to government, can formulate, and not only formulate, but create a draft, and then the government will just agree with strategies which didn't go even through the public debate, and which society is really not informed about, and even do not agree. So it was around the year 2013, 2014, and after this experience, activists from various parts of Christian or conservative organizations and initiatives organized a referendum for the family, which was actually just about keeping the status quo of our legislation, to keep like marriage of one man and one woman exclusive, to not have a civil unions, to keep the education of children in the hands of parents, and so on. But it was in the year 2015, and then was really huge counter initiative, or almost every media outlets in Slovakia had headlines like how this referendum is against the LGBT rights, and how it's promoting something dangerous against the minorities and the sexual minorities, and so. And after this referendum, with this strong anti-campaign, unfortunately it had only like 20% of voters participating, and in Slovakia for successful referendum you need at least 50% participation on the nation level. So the referendum was not successful in the way of approving the results to legislation, but it was quite successful in the way like politicians from the parties agreed to put the marriage of men and women to the constitution in the similar time period along this referendum. And also it had several secondary positive aspects, because when conservative and Christian people realized how historical was the campaign against this referendum, they realized that the mainstream media just do not represent them or even represents reality, and this campaign was full of hoaxes. So one of the secondary positive results of this referendum was the creation of media or internet newspapers called Postoj, which was oriented to conservative and Christian readers. And it started to establish like independent media from the mainstream, but which are like professional and not only volunteer or so-called alternative, which has problem with another type of hoaxes and so. So this was very important steps, and even after years, despite this referendum was not successful at the main goal, also many activists from LGBT groups say that it stopped these efforts like for 10 years, because the atmosphere was so hysteric that even they were promoting the next steps with like more patience, or were not able to motivate political parties with higher power to put this as a political priorities. So the lesson we learned, it's sometimes important to do what is right, despite there is maybe no chance to reach the main goal, but it can have many secondary positive results. And another positive result was that during these campaigns, like a network of organizations and actors from conservative spectrum was able to organize in a better way. And now and later, when various laws which were against natural or divine law were appearing on in the legislation process, it was possible to react faster and to have, for instance, to give the comments in the official legislation process and earn the support, like for instance, of hundreds of people or thousands of people in few hours or few days. So it was very important to create this network of contacts and of well-informed people which are quite independent from mainstream media or mainstream outlets. So another important experience was or were marches for life. Actually, these marches happening in Bratislava, in Košice from the years 2013 and 2015, 2019 were like the biggest mass demonstrations since the fall of communist regime and the mass protests during the Velvet Revolution in 1989. From 50,000 to 60 or 70, 80,000 people were gathering on these different protests. And it was also in together and thanks to collaboration with our bishop conference, and these were important events to bring culture of life and the important topics regarding dignity of life to public space. Unfortunately, despite putting together goals which were then promoted to politicians, also or unfortunately they were not implemented in the legislation process yet, but we are still looking for various strategies how to help to protect this dignity of life in Slovakia. In recent years and even during the last 3 years, where we had since 2020 elections, so-called conservative government, and in the newspapers with liberal progressive orientation, where from the year 2020 very broadly promoted the narrative that it will be like a conservative revolution, and this revolution actually didn't happen, unfortunately. But the last government was falling apart to pieces, and even the position and status quo in various aspects. For instance, with transgender were pushed to the progressive positions during last few years, and that's another important example how important it is to not only have like some political program, but also to have competent and well-formed specialists. I mean, from the law and from the different expert groups to keep the legislation process not only on a national level but also on like ministry level under control. Because, for instance, regarding transgender agenda, our Minister for Healthcare, who was nominated after the strong anti-campaign against previous healthcare minister, who was openly like pro-life and Christian-oriented politic. So there was a very strong anti-campaign against him, and the following one, which who was supported by the only one liberal party in the government, on the last day before he left the office, because he had more problems and also with financing strange projects and this transgender agenda. So on the last day before he left, he just signed the papers and standards which are allowing to, in some cases, to change the sex of men in or women in IDs, even without the hormonal therapy or even without surgical operation. So these are like signed documents, which were actually not a problem to just cancel for the Catholic Prime Minister, but he was unfortunately not able to do it. So now we are only like one step from the running this into the practice, and it will be question for the coming government how to try to stop, or for the activists and conservative people how to react on this. So another lesson is to keep an eye not only on national legislation, but even through the of course in different countries can be different system, but also through the not nation or not national legislation level, but in the ministry level, or even sometimes on local governmental level, you can have really dangerous policies happening. Another lesson we learned regarding, as Diane was mentioning, sexual education. So far in Slovakia, we have had for many years the subjects in the schools called education for the family, for the marriage and for the family and for the parenting, and it was not a standalone subject, but it was subject which appeared in different subjects and was going through the whole curriculum. Now the efforts were, of course, to put this sexual education as a standalone subject, and also a few concrete books which were created of one institute from Academy of Sciences, and even from some private companies connected and related to Planned Parenthood were created and pushed public for like a campaign. Not only for the education, but it's quite a successful business with this kind of lectures and also this kind of books, because they are offered then to the directors of the schools around the country, even sometimes when they don't have like state approval. So we were also one of the organization which we made a petition for politicians in parliament to bring to support the legislation that parents must be informed before this kind of lectures, and that they can that school cannot force the children to participate in the kind of lectures if they are not in line with like not ideology, but with religion or values of the parents. So it's actually strengthening the control of this, or it's democratize the and bringing up the participation of the parents on the public school system in these sensitive questions. So these are actually the value, the trends regarding the values, and there are of course more, and several good practices were also done in last years. For instance, in Slovakia, after many years, finally families are now supported on the national level in the similar way than in Poland or in Hungary, with like tax bonus for parents, and also for that they have like less taxes and higher bonuses in straight support of the families. But it was also interesting that when this campaign like of the former government, like 200 euro per one kid, appeared, the anti-campaign against this was really very strong, and these politicians with pro-family policies were surprised. How is that possible that media and all the experts are against it? But we consider it this way is how it's important to bring this pro-family and pro-life narratives and explanations as a part of culture and as a part of educational system, and also part of arts and what we see in television and in mass media, because otherwise these policies are often commented like something what is not possible to finance because there is deficit in state finances, but still it's priority number one because of demography and support for the families, that they can bring and raise children how many they would like and prefer. So also the salary bonus called, and it was another successful policy for a longer time planned, and after many years adopted. It's called parental bonus, and actually it's based on the motivational idea or structure that parents who were raising more children are getting some kind of bonus to the salary when they retired, and this bonus is calculated from the social insurance the children pay to the system. So it's also motivational in the way, like if you raise well children and these children are working and paying taxes and social insurance from this social insurance, because you create new solid and like good citizens who are helping to keep the system working. Then you get some percentage of like a bonus, because in comparison with people without raising children or more children, there should be some appreciation from the side of the state. So this was adopted after many years, and it's also pro-woman, because usually in Slovakia, women with more children have a very small retirement salary because of spending more years on maternity leave, and are in some way discriminated despite they had had done very important service for society of raising good new citizens. So it's also solving in some way this discrimination of mothers on the labor market. So there can be many more good or also bad practices experience, but I think we have already heard a lot of interesting speeches, and I will be happy to discuss in the later panel. So if I can call organizers, thank you very much for patience and listening, and I'm looking forward to next collaboration and discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now I would like to invite to the panel discussion
Bet prieš pradėdami diskusiją dar padarysim darbus.
First of all, we will read our declaration, first of all in Lithuanian and then in English.
Deklaracija. Pastaraisiais metais ypatingai suintensyvėjo politinės tendencijos, kurios iš esmės siejasi su didėjančia globalizmo galia ir leftistinio pobūdžio genderistinė ideologija. Socialiai toksiška ir politiškai antivalstybinė.
The declaration will be translated, the English text will be read afterwards.
Komisija įvairių tarptautinių konvencijų, kaip Stambulo konvencija, pramogų industrijų, kaip Hollywoodas, daugybės tarptautinių megakorporacijų ir didžiausių žinių bei socialinių medijų suformavo beprecedenčio masto išpuolį prieš šeimą, prigimtinės tėvų ir vaikų teisės. Tokia politinė kryptis jau kelia realią grėsmę konstituciniai piliečių ir demokratinių tautų laisvei. Šios konferencijos organizatoriai ir dalyviai pareiškia. Pirma, šeima ir santuoka kyla tik iš dviejų prigimtinių lyčių. Seksualinės tapatybės ir jų pagrindų formuojamos socialinės gyvenimo normos ar individualios saviraiškos praktikos negali būti prilygintos prigimtinėms konstitucinėms žmogaus teisėms. Antra, vaiko teisų politikoje turi būti laikomasi dviejų prigimtinių lyčių principų. Pagrindinis šeimos politikos tikslas – užtikrinti, kad vaiką augintų mama ar tėtis. Hormoninis ir chirurginis vaiko lyties keitimas, paremtas tik tėvų ir vaiko saviraiška, yra nusikalstamas. Trečia, turi būti garantuotos konstitucinės tėvų teisės auklėti vaikus pagal savo įsitikinimus. Valstybės politika turi stiprinti šeimą, prigimtinius tėvų ir vaikų santykius, o ne propaguoti tokias vaiko teisės, kurios leidžia valstybės institucijoms lengvai ardyti šeimas, prisidengiant geriausių vaiko interesų. Ketvirta. Prigimtinės lyties ir šeimos sampratų cenzūra yra nusikalstama. Genderistinė ideologija turi būti neleidžiama išstumti konstitucinės teisės į žodžio, minties ir religinių įsitikinimo laisvę. Penkta. Vaikų genderistinė seksualizacija švietimo sistemoje yra neleistina. Valstybinės švietimo programos turi būti paremtos dviejų prigimtinių lyčių sampratą. Socialinių tapatybių propagavimo švietimo įstaigose turi būti draudžiamas. Šešta. Jokie tarptautinių institucijų sprendimai lyties, šeimos, tėvų, vaikų teisių švietimo srityse negali būti viršesni už demokratinių valstybių konstitucinės vertybės, kurios gina prigimties, lyties ir šeimos sampratas. Septinta. Genderizmo ideologija, siekianti pakeisti prigimtinės lyties sampratą į socialiai sukonstruotą lytinę tapatybę, yra melaginga, vedanti į visuomenės ir valstybės destrukciją. Tam turi būti priešinimasi visose valstybės rytise – teisėje, politikoje, švietimo sistemoje, viešojoje erdvėje. Aštunta. Šiam pavojui, keliančiam realią grėsmę šeimų geroviai, Europos tautų kultūrai ir valstybių ateičiai įveikti būtina laikinai atsisakyti natūralių politinių ar socialinių interesų skirtumų ir susitelkti bendram darbui visas visuomenės ir politinės jėgas, religinės ir šeimų organizacijas, piliečių bendruomenės tiek kiekvienoje Europos valstybėje, tiek tarptautiniu mastu. Vilnius 2023 metų, gegužės 21 diena.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to announce our final declaration, which was originally prepared by the families of Lithuania movement and finished by us together just this night. Thank you all. Taigi noriu paskelbti mūsų baigiamąją deklaraciją, kurią originaliai paruošė Lietuvos šeimų sąjūdis, tačiau mes kartu ją pabaigėm tik šią naktį.
The same is repeated in Lithuanian.
Conference by the families of Lithuania movement, standing for the natural rights, let's save Europe together. In recent years, political trends which are basically connected with the growing power of globalism and the leftist genderist ideology have intensified, in particular the socially toxic and anti-state genderist ideology carried out by institutions such as European Court of Justice, the European Parliament and the European Commission, various conventions such as the Istanbul Convention, entertainment industries such as Hollywood, numerous international mega-corporations and the largest news and social media outlets have formed an attack on an unprecedented scale against the family, the natural rights of parents and children. Such political practices threaten the constitutional freedom of citizens and democratic nations in the future perspective. The organizers and participants of this conference declare: first, family and marriage originate only from two natural sexes. Sexual and gender orientations, social life forms, or individual self-expression practices based on them cannot be equated with natural constitutional human rights. Second, the principle of two natural sexes must be observed in the child rights policy. It is an elementary goal of a family policy to make sure a child is raised by mother and father. Hormonal and surgical reassignment of a child based solely on the parents or the child's self-expression is criminal. Third, the constitutional rights of parents to raise their children must be guaranteed. State policy must strengthen the family, the natural relationship between parents and children, and not to promote such child rights that allow state institutions to easily break up families under the guise of the best interest of the child. Fourth, Censorship of natural gender and family concepts is criminal. Genderist ideology must not be allowed to supplant the constitutional freedoms of religious belief, speech, and thought. Fifth, gender-based sexualization of children in the education system is not permitted. State education programs must be based on the concept of two natural sexes, and the promotion of gender identities is prohibited. Sixth, no decisions of international institutions in the fields of gender, family, parent, child rights, and education can be superior to the constitutional values of democratic states, which protect the natural concepts of sex and family. Seventh, the ideology of genderism, which promotes optional sexual orientations, changing natural sex according to an artificially constructed social gender identity, is false and leads societies and states to a dead end. It must be opposed in all areas of the state: law, politics, education system, public space. Eighth, in order to overcome this danger, which poses a real threat to the well-being of families, the culture of European nations, and the future of states, it is necessary to temporarily abandon the natural differences of political or social interests and to mobilize for joint work all progressive social and political forces, religious and family organizations, communities of citizens, and in every European state and internationally. Vilnius, 21st of May, year 2023. And now I'll be calling everybody to sign this in both languages. So we start. Signed by Chairman of the Families of Lithuania Movement, Raimondas Grinevičius, Lithuania. Raimondas, please call him. Director of the Center of the International Law, Ordo Juris, Poland. Tarptautinės teisės centro direktorė iš Ordo Juris, Lenkija, Veronika Pšebirala. Thank you. Then social and political scientist Dr. Andrius Švarplys from Lithuania. He will sign this a little bit later today. Socialinis ir politikos mokslininkas Dr. Andrius Švarplys iš Lietuvos pasirašys.
Dr. Andrius Švarplys will sign a little bit later.
Research Associate of the Ruth Institute, Board of the Society of Catholic Social Scientists from the United States of America, Reverend D. Paul Salins, Doctor of Philosophy, Amerikos katalikų universiteto sociologijos docentas, vyresnysis Ruth universiteto mokslinis bendradarbis, katalikų visuomeninių mokslų mokslininko draugijos valdybos narys, Jungtinių Amerikos valstijų, tėvas Dr. Donald Paul Sullins.
I've never signed my name in Lithuanian before. Very pleased to do that.
Thank you. Sako, niekada dar anksčiau lietuvių kalba nebuvo rašęs savo vardu. Taigi, Scottish Family Party, the leadership of Marriage, Sex and Culture Group from United Kingdom, Master of Sciences, rest of the titles, Diane Horsley. Please. Škotijos šeimų partijos narė Santuokos sekso ir kultūros grupės, viena iš vadovių iš Jungtinės karalystės, socialinių mokslų magistrė, visuomenės sveikatos mokslų magistrė Diana Horsley iš Jungtinės karalystės. Member of the Council, Communication Officer of the Families of Lithuanian Movement, Lithuania, Algimantas Rusteika. Taigi asociacijos Lietuvos šeimų sąjūdis tarybos narys, atstovas komunikacijoje Algimantas Rusteika, Lietuva.
Aš savo.
Ačiū. Then, legal analyst at Alliance for Family from Czech Republic, Mr. Mikloš Tomas Misterka, Alijanso šeimai teisės analitikas iš Čekijos Respublikos, Mikloš Tomas Misterka. Thank you. Managing Director of the Ladislav Hanus Institute and the organizer of the Conservative Summit from Slovakia, Marek Novak, vykdantysis Ladislav Hanus instituto direktorius ir konservatorių viršūnių susitikimo organizatorius iš Slovakijos, Marek Novak.
Thank you. And I just like to add that it's very important to see our opponents as human beings, just only with wrong opinions, but that are possible to change. So yeah, I cross fingers to your movement to bring the best values on which our civilization was built, and as one of the most successful, back to Lithuania. So good luck for you.
Thanks, Marek. Nežinau, ar verčia, tai dar pats pridursiu.
I would like also to add it is very important to see our opponents as people, as human beings, although they are with different values. And my colleagues wish that we must come back to our further cooperation and develop our activities, joint activities.
Hungarians had to leave this morning, early this morning, so Ms. Ona Laku from the Center for Fundamental Rights, she is coordinator for the international affairs there. Ana Laku iš Vengrijos, iš bazinio teisų centro tarptautinių ryšių koordinatorė jau išskridusi, taigi pasirašė jau vakar. Dėkoju visiems susirinkusiems.
Thank you on my behalf, on the behalf of our movement, and now I I would like to ask you to resume our discussion. Let's continue the discussion. So, dear friends, we still have some time for the discussion and to ask, to provide questions to our experts. So first of all, from the audience, do you have any questions, remarks, your impressions about this 2-day intensive conference? Any remarks? Any questions? I would like to thank you for coming to Lithuania from different countries to our conference, and that you've demonstrated that we are not alone, and you showed that we are not alone. We have, different, not very nice titles here in Lithuania. So thank you for coming. Thank you for showing that we are not alone in our activities. And I would also like to thank all the foreign experts being with us, your presentations. Well, we felt a little bit in different horizons, not only intellectually, but as in Lithuania 3 years ago, when the family movement was launched, the society did approve of a movement, but major parties didn't support us. There were quite a lot of blackmail and bullying, intensive bullying, and practically it has been continuing until now. And some of our people distracted from this movement. But anyway, I think that the most courageous and determined members of our movement are still with us, as from the Bible, when the battle is going on and the leader is praying, and the leader needs the friends, the supporters to hold the hand. So once again, thank you so much for being with us. And I would like to ask you on what you have heard here. What for you seemed the most valuable and useful to convey to your society when you come back to the United States, Croatia, Slovakia, Poland, or Scotland?
Say that I have learned so much from my Eastern European friends. I have much to learn from you. We are living in very different culture, but you have the history of being dissidents, of being able to stand up against evil doing, wrongdoing, and I need that courage too. So please, I still have much more to learn from you all.
I would like to second that. Diane and I were talking about this earlier today. It's very impressive to meet a group of persons and very impressive young people who are determined to win the battle against the woke gender ideology. We are often presented with the idea that somehow it's inevitable, that we have these huge forces against us. It's like trying to blow back against a hurricane coming the other way. But after seeing the determination and the excellence of the presentations here today, I think that it is true that we are a small remnant and that we are in a resistance mode. But it is also true that I think that we will prevail and that we will overcome. We have the truth on our side, which cannot be put out, cannot be extinguished and overcome. And so I want to encourage you, as I have been encouraged, that we need to stand and keep speaking our truth, even when things seem very, very dark, because the day will come when people will look back and see the wasteland of of the gender ideology and be rejoicing that we did not let it prevail.
So for me, what I would like to add, so what I have learned on this during this event is also everything from the other speakers and from their presentations and speeches which they made. Especially, I like the lot of data and the statistical presentation of here, Mr. Salins. So that was one which I will really remember for a long time, as we are repeatedly told that there is something scientific behind the claims of our opponents and so on, but that's very much often that's not true, and this is one of the things and one of these data which we will definitely look at and we will definitely use when I come back to the Czech Republic as well, not only from the formal part of the conference, but also from the informal part, from talking with Lithuanian people and participants who came forward to this conference after the speeches or in between them, or just generally talking to other speakers and participants also outside of the conference floor.
I will just to add to Reverend note and few 2 points. As you mentioned that the truth about us as human beings and the society and like the best practice for us will prevail sooner or later, but it's the question how many victims will these wrong ideologies or dangerous ideologies, which are actually dangerous not only to individual human beings and to children, but to the society as a whole, how many victims will leave behind. And I don't like the approach like it's coming, it will come, it will prevail, we have to just be quiet, stay at home, live our personal life, because we will be in some way responsible, at least to our children, in how many victims and how many destroyed lives and how many destroyed communities and how many destroyed relationships will be behind this, let's say, woke ideologies. So it's our duty to stand up, and all of us have some talents, some creative possibilities how to react on problems in all our countries, because it's similar but different in some way and very specifically different. So I think it's important we unite, we exchange our best practices and experiences, we support each other, because in some countries this fight, this battle, it's more back, in some more in front, in some it's very visible, in some it's still quite not visible. So it's important we are informing us and share these experiences between each other. And there is a wonderful quote of our former dissidents. I was mentioning this tradition of underground church, which was in Slovakia during the communist era, able to keep its like virtues and to resist in peaceful manner to totalitarian regime. And this man, Sylvester Krčmery, was in jail for many years, in of course after unjust trial, and after a long time as a lonely man in dark room, kept in jail, when he was in the front of his prosecutors who were like driven crazy in these trials, and he had a beautiful speech, and he said like, you have the power, but we have the truth. We don't envy you this power. We just want to keep this truth, and this truth will prevail. So that's it.
I would like to refer to what Mark said, that I think it's our duty to stand up for what we consider is important to us and see our life as a service to others. And it is also encouraging for me to see young people who are doing the same things, but it is also, I think, for us important to have a role models which will take care of for us and say that it's important for you doing, and that is right. Thank you.
So my experience, I will provide a metaphor. When the army is surrounded, it has a lot of guns, quite a lot of live soldiers, but when the army knows that it is occupied and surrounded, and there are no families, no relatives, they get frightened, and they try to survive, to look for the ways of survival, etc. Although they do know that they have lots of guns, they have everything. But if they find out, if the soldiers find out that they are closed ones, their family members are not available, they cannot survive anymore. The first international relations in Lithuania, quite a lot of organizations, their number is increasing and increasing. I know that Ukraine organizes for 10 years family marches. In Slovakia, Czech Republic, we didn't invent anything new. We simply started to do what is being done by other countries. Darkness has never won in the world. Empires, today or tomorrow, they will be destroyed. And my impression is optimistic. My views are optimistic and very, very light. I would like to add something to what Algimantas has said. We felt as a minority some time ago because all the media was not in our hands. We didn't have possibilities to broadcast on TV, no channels to disseminate what we feel, what we know, or kind of a paradox to my mind, because everybody who are against family institutions are from these families, are from the families, because then we can make a conclusion that they are in the minority, because the majority of families, they are still natural families in their initial state. So I could say one very important thing: when we have in our hands information tools, they have information tools. We are not minority. We are not weak. A very simple thing. Simply, we were deceived, imposed a deceived policies. But as Algimantas told you, the truth is on our side. We will win. But thank you for coming. Thank you for your contribution.
Okay, and we've received another question from the people watching us over the internet. Perhaps it's addressed to the countries aiming to enter the EU. The question is whether we'll try to contact the EP, European Parliament, regarding the banning of such ideology propagation in countries where it is against the constitution. So maybe our guest from the Czech Republic, Poland and Slovakia could answer that question. As far as I know, Arda Juris has developed several documents that have been published, and any Lithuanian citizen who is an EU citizen can sign it and apply to the EP. And if they will respond to that, well, just like Rulov's fable says, they cannot solve their own problems talking about the wolf. So basically they are predisposed, and I believe the current EPs cannot do that. We should focus on the next term of the European Parliament members, and we should actually vote for our own members who could address these points successfully. Would you like to add something up to what was said before?
No. Okay. Ar dar būtų kokių klausimų?
Would there be any further questions or insights or feedback? If not, thank you so much once again. And when listening to the presentations and sharing the impressions, I had the thought of the following metaphor, that we had the majority of Christians and believers talking here through their own relationship of the order determined by the God. And I just remembered the idea that Christians are the salt of this land. It doesn't seem that we need lots of salt, but without salt any food becomes untasty. So let's keep being that salt, and let's remind others when more salt is needed in order not to eat that bland food that we are getting used to through our media and public space that they aim to get us used to. Thank you so much for coming. I believe it's the first meeting, but not the last one, so see you next time. Yes, and as far as I know, we are going to complete this event by a prayer. Dear Diana, the floor is yours.
I would just like to read a scripture, please. We've spoken much about hope. And in the Bible, in the book of Romans, Paul writes this: "May the God of all hope fill you with joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit." Let us pray. Lord God, Almighty Heavenly Father, we thank you for all that's gone on over these 2 days. Thank you for the insights, the inspiration, the network and the friendships that have been formed. We pray for strength for the Lithuanian family movement in their resolve to stand up and to stem the tide of the evil which seems to invade their land and corrupt the hearts and minds of their precious children and young people. May the spirit of the fear of God come upon this land, and a spirit honouring of their fathers and mothers. May they know your protection. Lord God, we thank you for your wisdom, for your insights and understanding in these times. Please continue to enlighten, to engage, to equip and encourage your precious people in this beautiful land. In Jesus' name and for his service, Amen.
O renginį užbaigs Lietuvos šeimos sąjūdžio vadovas.
And now the floor is given to the chairperson of the Lithuanian Movement for Families, Raimondas Navičius. Just in brief, because we're all tired, about this conference. I have felt that we have developed a certain book that should land on the table of each member of parliament in Lithuania, namely consisting of various quotes and concepts of the traditional family and family values. They should really delve into these concepts very well. We have invited MPs from every faction. We have sent emails to them, invited them. At least 3 persons had the possibility to come over and listen to these presentations. That should be the basis of their activities. But I don't know, maybe this topic is painful to them, maybe not acceptable. Maybe afterwards it would be impossible for them if they had listened to these topics and presentations. So maybe it's easier not to listen to such topics and provide their own opinions. Not much about the conference and about the media. The only media source called us and asked about the topics to be discussed, and perhaps those topics were also not acceptable to them. So I believe that this conference actually made a hit against our opponents, and we are going to look forward to wait for the response hits. We're going to stand against together with your help. Thank you so much, and thank you so much to Alder Luris. Please convey our heartiest thanks and biggest thanks to your leadership, because you are sort of Christian or baptized parents to godparents to our movement. We have managed to establish the movement. However, thanks to your contribution, we managed to find our friends in other countries. Thank you so much once again.